A fact that's getting easier and easier to forget as Joe Biden seems to be disappearing from the public stage as his term comes to an end.
Biden believes in tradition and institutions, and we should only have one president at a time. And I think it's a surprising choice to allow it to be Donald Trump.
Miranda Devine out with a new opinion piece titled, Joe Biden has been president in name only since he was inaugurated. Our power panel now, Brianna Lyman, the Federalist elections correspondent, and Brad Howard, Corcoran Street Group president, are with us. So a lot of Democrats calling for a rebuild, Brianna, but where to start? Because many Democrats don't even seem to acknowledge where they went wrong.
Yeah, you don't want to put the cart before the horse here. And the Democrats need not to focus on a messenger, rather a message. Because what we saw in 2024 is that they picked the 2020 message, was that Donald Trump is a bad guy, don't vote for him. But that didn't work this go around, because I think a lot of people kind of wisened up and said, you know what? I like my 4 years under Donald Trump better than I like them under Biden. But Democrats didn't get the memo. They weren't willing to feel the pulse of the nation because they didn't know how they would defend their past 4 years and the policy proposals they had. So Democrats have to coalesce, figure out a message, and then choose a messenger.
So former Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson, who, full disclosure, is a family friend, wrote this, quote, it will take a much deeper insight into people, much greater compassion for what Americans are going through, and expert insight into the emotional and psychological dynamics that have led millions of people to abandon the Democratic Party. There's a lot in that article, and it calls for a top-to-down review, at least of the DNC, if not the entire Democratic Party. Is that what's necessary, Brad?
Well, look, I think you look at the election, a lot of the policies that Democrats support, introduce, and champion in Congress, from paid leave to abortion protections, were ratified at the states level in some states that also voted for Donald Trump. So that tells us, I think our policies are right, but to the previous speaker's point, we've got to work on our message and our messengers. And I think as a party, the important thing is for us to recognize that it's not voters' responsibility to come to us. It's our responsibility to go to them. So instead of lecturing, Democrats have got to spend some more time listening, learning, and delivering results. And so, we've got a DNC chair race coming up. We're going to select a new chairman of the party, I think February 1st. You look at folks like Martin O'Malley, who is got the experience he needs as an operational leader, broke fundraising records, and flipped red states at the DGA. That's the type of sort of a person that can operationally bring the party to success. But we also need a fighter in Congress. We've got Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who's going to pick up the mantle for National Democrats and work with Republicans, as we have seen just on the CR this last week. He is willing to work with Republicans and govern, but he's also going to fight Donald Trump, where he thinks he's, doesn't stand in line with values that have been at the foundation of America for centuries.
He also can't seem to figure out what Doge is all about, even though a lot of Democrats are beginning to embrace it. Let me ask
not a real thing.
Well, let me ask you this, because Democratic Senator John Fetterman, who's become somewhat of a contrarian in the Democratic Party, scolded critics who want President-elect Trump to fail and thought calling him a fascist wasn't the smartest thing to do. Listen.
I've been warning people, like, you got to chill out. Like the constant, freak out. It's not helpful. I'm not rooting against him. If you're rooting against the president, you are rooting against the nation. And I'm not ever going to be where I want a president to fail. So country first.
So, Brianna, what does that say about all of these Democrats who are lining up the, quote, resistance against Trump?
John, I'm going to answer that in a second. I just want to go back to something Brad said really quickly about abortion. I will know Politico, I believe it was, back in January, they did an article and they found that in 2022, during the midterms, when there were abortion referendums, a lot of the turnout wasn't driven by Democrats. It was driven by Republicans. So it's not that Democrats' messaging on abortion is necessarily working. But as to your point about the fascism thing, look, John Fetterman may say it explicitly. Kamala Harris also said it implicitly. If you remember her concession speech, she turned around and said, everything will be okay. Well, how could you say that if you just spent 6 months saying Donald Trump's a fascist, he's dangerous, he's a huge risk to this country? It's because she knows she was lying. And unfortunately, for her vulnerable and low information base, they bought those lies hook, line, and sinker. And that's why they're freaking out today. But Democrats have yet to feel the pulse of the nation that said, we don't care about your false, phony smears. We care about the immigration, economy, and crime.
Speaking of untruths or lies or whatever you want to call them. Brad, more fallout after a scathing Wall Street Journal report. The headline, how the White House functioned with the diminished Biden in charge. Aides kept meetings short and controlled access. Top advisors acted as go-betweens, and public interactions became more scripted. The administration denied that Biden has declined. A new opinion piece with this headline, the Biden cover-up is fast unraveling. We've heard repeatedly Democrats in the liberal media run defense against concerns over Biden's mental fitness.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years.
He is just fine. I engage with him frequently and alert, sound.
He's the president of the United States. You know, I can't even keep up with him. That is not a question that we should be even asking.
Well, Brad, according to reports in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, all of those statements did not have the added benefit of being true.
Well, let me respond back to the previous speaker, too, about abortion. It was the President Trump and the Republicans that got rid of the right to protection of abortion nationwide, thanks to the Supreme Court decision.
There's no right in the Constitution. He sent it back to the states.
When you look at what Fetterman said about the president, I think Fetterman has a point, though I would clarify that for Democrats, this can't be about opposing Donald Trump because you don't like him. And I don't think many Democrats are doing that. What Democrats are doing is we think his policies are wrong and dangerous for the country, and therefore we're going to work with them to get it to a point where we rethink they are the best they can be, or we're going to downright oppose the ones we think are bad. That's where Democrats are. But we've got to get back to this focus on kitchen table issues. And I think that's where Democrats are headed. We got to get tired of the bickering. We got to work together, and Democrats have shown that they will.
All right, so 15 seconds each, and let's start with you, Brianna. What about this idea that the White House looks like it is engaged in a cover-up of monumental proportions about Biden's declining cognitive abilities?
If we had a functioning press, it wouldn't take 4 years for this story to come out. All the evidence was there for the past 4 years. You and I saw it. Instead, we have a propaganda press that carried water for the White House's message on Joe Biden being sharp as a tack.
All right, Brad?
I'll just say that I think a lot of the careful restrictions around the president were a president entering re-election mode where you want to reduce the number of potential errors.
Such a cop-out, Brad. Come on.
Look, I am proud of President Biden's record abroad. I'm proud of his defense of democracy, his support for Israel. And the economy right now is the best it's been in a very long time.
That's why you guys lost. That's why Democrats lost.
About the economic future, the economic story that the president has to tell.
And yet Kamala Harris lost every swing state and lost the popular vote. Brad, Brianna, I hope you have a great holiday season. Merry Christmas to both of you.
Merry Christmas.
All right. San Jose State University's volleyball team still at the center of the fight for fairness in women's sports.
And that is not fair to the female athletes who, for many of them, have not